Good morning, folks. This is Terry Trueblood from the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police. I'm the Chair of Trustees and the host of the podcast known as Facts Matter. And we have two retired sheriffs here from Effingham County, one, and the other from Fayette County. We have Sheriff Dave Mahon, and we have Sheriff Chris Palmer. They are part of a group of a large number of executives that have exited law enforcement. Both of these guys have had a full career at state level. Dave was a master sergeant with state police and kind of a SWAT guy, one of the high speed, low drag kind of guys we talk about. Chris, likewise, was with Secretary of State Police and was on the bomb squad, another high speed, low drag kind of guy. And they both became sheriffs of their counties and have both left that, along with numerous other sheriffs across the state, including chiefs and, of course, a lot of officers. We here at the podcast, we predicted this. The FOP knew this was going to be a mass exodus after the passage of House Bill 3653. So I'll just kind of go, Dave, to you first. You want to give us a little bit of your background and so the folks know where you're coming from.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. I did 25 years with the state police. I retired in 2013 as a master sergeant. Had a great career. I loved it. I wanted to be involved in law enforcement and some other avenues. I always thought about running for sheriff. I'm from Effingham County, grew up here, worked here, and there was an opening. The sheriff retired, so I ran. I did 6.5 years. I retired a year and a half early. I was kind of planning on, I was looking at retirement. I was going to do one term for sure, maybe two. And my wife ended up retiring a little bit earlier than we thought. She supported me and she said, "Hey, it's time to retire and let's go have fun." And this is all in the works. And so I didn't necessarily retire because of that, but it's kind of like God telling me, yes, this is a good reason to go. So that was my choice. I was elected in 2014 and then I just retired this past June.
Fantastic. And Chris, you?
Sure. Thanks, Terry. I started off as a Vandalia cop back in 92, and I got on with the Secretary of State Police. I was a hostage negotiator, and I was on the tech services unit. And like I said, I retired as a bomb tech. I got appointed as sheriff when Sheriff Chris Smith retired. And I'm kind of the opposite of Dave. Chris said, just about every day, his last 2 months, it said, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to give it a try." And he said, "You better be leaving with me." Well, the next thing you know, they passed the bill, House Bill 3653, and it all went downhill from there. And then I mass exodus with everybody else. Like I said, I'm opposite of Dave, though I left because of it. Just too much on the table to even try to comprehend for one person with all of the 700 and I don't know how many pages. Decertification, unfunded mandates. It's too much liability for one person to have to deal with. So I was more than happy to tell them, "Thanks for everything. I'll see you later."
Great. Well, yeah, and we've been hearing that across the board with folks that are exiting, and it's, the General Assembly needs to hear this and hear it really strongly. When you get your chief executives leaving for a variety of these reasons, and other ones are just not they're going to run out their term and just not run again. That's some of the other things that are out there just to get done. So of the House Bill 3653, Chris, I'll ask you first. What was the greatest challenge that you saw as sheriff trying to deal with that debacle?
Well, that's what the greatest challenge is of 100 different topics.
Right.
Like I said, unfunded mandates, this whole decertification, like you said, the required trainings, the lack of money, the liabilities they put on sheriffs as far as jail and the jail staff, the inmates, what their requirements are going to be, mental, anybody who is reasonably determined to have a minimum capacity, or pregnant females. The list is, I could probably talk for 20 minutes on all the lists, but it was just so many things coming at you at one time that, I just kind of said, "Yeah, you guys win. You can find somebody else to do it." So.
Right. I got it. And Dave, you have any thoughts on the challenges?
Yeah, I think a big one for me when this was all going down, that so many questions, questions from the public, questions from the county board, how's this going to affect everything, and probably more importantly, because of the organization, were the question from the deputies, and the people that work for me, and they look at you like, oh, your leadership, you should know exactly what's going on. When half the legislators didn't know what's going, more than half, they didn't know what's going on. So, I had a lot of contacts and just so much confusion as to what we do next. And it just, we're still trying to work it out, and when I got out, there were a lot of things that were still uncertain. The legislators were going to meet again, and they said, well, we've passed this is what we have to deal with, but we're going to try to mitigate some of that with future legislation. And I don't know that a lot of that has happened. And I think it's scary when you're in law enforcement. And one of the biggest things was the immunity that looked like that was going to go away. And I could tell you, I promise you, I would have retired the next day or the day it was passed. There's no doubt in my mind, because I wouldn't work without that. And I think that's a big chunk of the personnel out there, the cops out there on the street. You can't afford it. I've worked 25 years with the state police to get what I had, and I didn't take a retirement from the sheriff's office. I didn't do it for the money, and it doesn't pay enough to even be a sheriff starting out. And now they throw all this at you. It's like, like Chris said, see ya, it's been a great ride, but I'm smart enough to know that I need to get off.
Right. So, exactly.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, that's what we're getting. I mean, for people, you guys can add to this, but just a few counties to throw out there to people. Now, if you're listening from the Chicagoland area, these counties may not mean anything to you, but for those that are central Southern Illinois, some of these counties will three of us try to list off. Obviously, Fayette and Effingham. You guys are bordering counties. My understanding, Marion County, Clinton County, Shelby County.
Yes.
Who else do we have?
Wayne County, Fayette County.
Okay.
Fayette County, and actually, that's the reason Chris Smith left.
Yes. Yeah.
And appointed me, and of course, I had to give it a whirl. But my last thing too, when we're talking all these counties, is I actually met with our area state senator, and he said, "Well, this is nothing. It's going to get worse before it gets better." And that was a pretty huge nail in the coffin for me leaving.
Right. Well, I know as of January 1st, we're going to have this whole no bail situation. We've seen how that did not work in New York, and it's not working in Chicago. They've already kind of done it. How's it going to work in Southern Illinois or downstate counties in general? Dave, you got a concept on that?
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest drawbacks to this, besides the immunity thing, which they haven't really passed yet. But they're talking about it. You can't arrest somebody for a Class A misdemeanor, and somebody used the example, you come home from work and there's a guy barbecuing a steak on your grill in your backyard, and you tell him, hey, what are you doing? I'm grilling a steak. All right, well, I'm calling, you need to get out of here. And he says no. So you call the police show up and say, hey, you need to get out of here. And he tells them no. Okay, well, the police can now write him a ticket for trespassing, give him their ticket, and then they're going to leave because they can't take him to jail. So okay, the police leave. What do you think happens then? It all depends upon the guy that owns the grill, in my opinion. So we're not solving anything. We're leaving people up to their own demise as to how they're going to solve their problems. And that's just it's a silly example, but that could happen,
Absolutely. Chris, do you have anything on that?
Well, and I'll add to that. Dave had a great example, but you're talking about no housing of Class A misdemeanors, and in the same breath, the state legislature, at least the Democratic side, is pushing hard to make all drug possessions under 5 grams a misdemeanor, including heroin, fentanyl. 5 grams of fentanyl will kill a lot of people. That's a lot of drug. Yeah. And they're trying to push it as a misdemeanor because, well, if they're locked up, then how are they going to get any help? But we all know as police officers that if they're locked up, they're just not going to steal from people and buy their drugs and continue their addiction. So the no cash bail is going to be such a, not just for public peace and public preservation of the peace, it's going to be a huge financial hit for the counties.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one, we had a lady on the podcast here. She was one of the head of the coalition for domestic violence, and the concept of somebody, beating the hell out of their spouse, getting drug into jail, and then immediately released to go back and do worse. No cooling off period, no time down to get in front of a judge. She thought that was a debacle. That was going to be a really big problem.
Yeah, that's a step backwards. We used to kind of, be that way when we did make arrests on domestics, and then back, and it was actually an Effingham County case, Kinkler versus I can't remember what her name was, but where we need to make an arrest if an arrest is justified. The officer needs to and has to. So now we're going backwards.
Absolutely. Very good. Well, I guess there are other things are to try to put all this in place. There's training costs, and I don't think the public actually realizes the training costs. We were talking just before we started the podcast about, there's some, cultural diversity type training. It was going to be like 40 hours, my understanding. How would you, in a small or medium-sized department, be able to pull a guy off the street for a week to go to something like that? And how's it going to be paid for?
Well, Go ahead, Chris.
Dave. You go for it.
I struggled with that. You can never get too much training. You can never have too much training, and you have so many people on your department to cover your patrols, and then whenever you pull a guy off of training for even a day, you have to pay somebody else to be there for that day to cover for that person. So typically at time and a half. So it's a real burden on counties, especially small counties where they don't have a lot of personnel, to come up with the people to backfill. Otherwise, you don't have a cop on the street, at that time. And we know that doesn't work. We all have minimums, whether they be 2, 4, 6, whatever the size your department is. And a bigger department won't be as bad to handle that because they have a lot more people to draw from. But boy, smaller departments where, there's departments out there. We had, 16 officers full time, and that's 24/7. That's and we have a minimum of 2 to 3 working the road at the time. So it's hard to get that training in.
Right. Chris?
Sure. And not only is it the overtime, but you're thinking, you're not talking one day of training. One would assume if it's going to be a set training that ILSB has anything to do with, it's going to be a week-long training. So trying to fill, even for little Fayette County, we have 2 guys on a shift covering 730 square miles. That's 4 people a day, every day for a week, not just counting the cost. We can't find people to fill our shifts now because nobody wants to be in law enforcement. So trying to find a certified officer to cover while all of our officers are this week-long training is unfathomable, not even counting the cost.
Well, it does bring me to my next question, talking about recruitment and retention. Obviously, it's cheaper theoretically to retain officers, but we also have to continue to recruit because people do retire. And Chris, I'll start off with you. Thoughts on recruitment and then shifting into retainment?
I think recruitment's going to be really tough for smaller agencies because you can look in the advertisements. Edwardsville right now, they're taking laterals where you can start at 82,000. We can't touch that. And the numbers of police officers are so low that certified officers are going to be able to go wherever they want based on however much they want to make. So try to get somebody in Fayette County where our starting pay is way below. We're in the, upper 40s. Right. So getting somebody to go through the only way we'll be able to do it is we'll just be a rotating door. You'll have somebody maybe as a correctional officer that we send through a part-time or full-time academy. They get their certification, and then they look at that, state police, 66,000. They have some time on and go to Edwardsville, make 70 or 80,000. Why would you stay in Fayette County? So we'll just be a revolving door for people to leave.
Dave, you concur with that?
Oh, absolutely. Chris is absolutely correct. One thing that really scares me on this too is the quality of people that we're going to get. The people that are, that we need, to be be a cop, a law enforcement officer, you need to be the best of everything. And we want the best people. But unfortunately, these best people are going to be smart enough to know they don't want to be a cop. So now we're getting the best of the lower half of the public out there. And I hate to say it, Effingham County, I just went in, I'm still in the 911 board in Effingham County. And I was at work today and I talked to the sheriff in there now, and they just tested and they had over half the candidates fail the written test. And the written test is not that hard. I mean, but you know, it's written for somebody without any college degree. And I'm not a big fan of having a college degree, have to have a college degree. We need people with common sense. So we don't look at that, but still the smart people are going to college and they're not becoming cops. So, you know, we're starting out with the lower half, and you know yourself, those are not the kind of people that we want to be law enforcement officers. And that, to me, that is probably the biggest worst side of this. You know, when they passed this House bill that made Illinois one of the most liberal anti-police states in the nation. I mean, we went from like probably, I can't imagine what the number was before, to like one of the top ones, if not the top one. And that was touted, you know, when they passed that bill, that's where we wound up at.
Right. Well, you know, they wanted to have this high quality law enforcement, and yet they did everything possible to drive high quality people out of the profession, because smart, high quality people, like you're saying, Dave and Chris, they're smart enough to know this is too damn dangerous to be in here, not just physically, but financially, and for your own liberty. It's too damn dangerous to do that job when you don't have the support of your state and your communities. Now, you probably have local community support, but that's not going to help a whole hell of a lot when the state laws go against you. So the smart people are leaving, and that's exactly opposite of what they said they wanted. They want smart, they want good, they want the best law enforcement. And what do you do for that? You make it comfortable so they can do the job, and you pay them well. And that's how you get it. It's how you get good doctors, how you get good dentists, how you get good lawyers across the board. That's how you do it. And yet they took this position that caused the very problem they were trying to supposedly prevent. But I truly believe they really just want to get rid of law enforcement in general. But then you get the whole posse comitatus situation going on, or some other vigilante stuff that may start to resurrect itself, especially in, you know, certain counties that don't have a large number of law enforcement people. So just some thoughts there. If you were going to give some words of wisdom to the public, you know, about this, what they should do, you know, as it relates to this House Bill 3653. I mean, we know we have 102 counties. Of the 102, probably 100 are probably, I'll call red counties, and there's like a couple of blue counties, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, depends on which side of the fence you're on. It's where all the population's at, and so they tend to carry the leverage. But what's the average guy or gal who's concerned about this supposed to do? And Chris, I guess I'll start off with you.
I think, first and foremost, law enforcement is not, even though the sheriff position is political, when you just go straight line police, don't put politics in it. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, you have to support the guys who are going to come to your aid when you dial 911. And it doesn't really matter what side of the fence you're on. If you need help, they don't care what side you're on. They're going to come and help you. But how are they going to come and help you if they're in fear of getting decertified, or heaven forbid they don't turn their body camera on, and now you have the Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board and other people accusing them of trying to hide evidence and all this craziness. So any general public, my biggest recommendation is be vocal in supporting your police. We didn't even touch on all the myriad of House Bill 3653 when it comes to anonymous complaints. If people are able to file an anonymous complaint on an officer, and inmates figure this out in the jail, the administration is going to have so much work to do, they're not even going to be able to see daylight, because every anonymous complaint has to be investigated.
Correct.
So the public, if something good happens to you at the police officer, email the department. Tell them, hey, this officer did this good for me. Get something in that officer's file. If you got 1,000 people a year that can send good stuff in, and you get 10 complaints or 20 complaints, as long as you're showing the good part of police work, then the negative complaints, when they are found to be unfounded, won't mean much. But if you have an officer that doesn't get anything good, even though he does great work, and he gets nothing in his file from John Q. Public that says something as simple as I had a flat tire and Officer Joe pulled off and he helped me change it. Anything good that can go in that guy's file is going to be extremely beneficial to them in the future. And it sounds silly, but it's so important.
Exactly. Dave?
I agree with Chris. That's a good point. I think the public probably needs to be more involved in politics as far as the what their legislators and senators and how they feel and what they're voting on. That's kind of hard to do because some of this stuff happens in the dead of the night. I think this bill actually passed at like 4 a.m., which is crazy in itself. But just to stay on top of stuff, most of the local where we're from, we're Effingham County is a great community, pro police, all very supportive, and our legislators that represent us are the same way. But to try to be able to reach out to these other legislators, and it's a sad thing, but I think it's just they're gonna realize that in a couple of years that this isn't working, and I think they're finding that out in Chicago. Right now we talked about that a little bit before, off camera, what's going on up there, and it's just a shit show, and nobody knows. One of the things that really bothered me when I was in were the mandates that we had to go in and redact all the records of the people that were arrested, because for the even though it was against the law, when they did it, we had to go in and clear all their files. So that cost us a lot of manpower, a lot of time, a lot of money. And, to make sure it was right, they broke the law. It was, okay, they could change the law now, but that doesn't, negate the fact that they broke the law way back then. And we're just acting like it didn't happen. It's just crazy. Everything, it's just upside down. Yeah. I'm just glad that I was in a position to be able to go, so it was like God saying, yep, you're making the right decision. Get the heck out of there.
Right. Well, and what Dave was alluding to for the listeners is, we know as of today of the taping, Chicago PD, their mayor is ordering the patrolmen of Lodge 7, FOP Lodge 7, to get vaccinated, whether they want to or not. And, the FOP has never been for vaccinations or against vaccinations. We've been freedom first. And that's the way it's kind of been. And now this is being mandated upon people. And, if they don't get vaccinated, they're going to be terminated or put on non-paid status. In addition, she told the FOP president he could no longer have free speech, and got a judge to order he couldn't go on social media and speak to his own people.
That's crazy.
That is incredible. That's not the way the Constitution works, as far as I know. But this is what we're living with. And when you get Fruit Loop situations like this really causes problems. And it's more of a pissing match than something in reality. And I think that's a real issue that we got to be cognizant of. The people have to be cognizant of that and be real cautious about who they vote in. So, hey, as we wrap this thing up, I'll give you guys a chance to say your last piece here as we close up this very interesting conversation. So, Chris, I'll let you start.
Thanks, Jerry. Best thing I could say is, like I said earlier, just support your police. You're really going to people are going to need to get positive comments in for police work. If you have a bunch of negative, unfounded complaints, it's never going to look good in the eye of public opinion, or the court of public opinion. Support your police. Be very vocal on it. Call your legislators. See if you can't get change. Like Dave said, I'm very blessed to be able to leave and still have a pretty good life. But I got a lot of friends out there, and of course, I'm thinking about and praying for them every day, their safety, not only on the job, but their careers in general. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Dave?
I kind of echo what Chris said. It's, public needs to stay abreast of what's going on and stay in contact with their legislators, send them a letter, And you can fill out witness statements. Pretty easy to do when a bill gets passed. You can go in and fill that out. It doesn't take much time at all on the computer, and get on the internet and fill that out. And it just, the Illinois Sheriff's Association is a very good association, and will keep a lot of people along with the FOP. But I was involved in that on the later part, the Sheriff's Association. They keep the public apprised of what's going on. And I think it's like $35 a year to belong to that. It's well worth the money, and it goes to a great cause. And the sheriffs, the counties don't have the money that the state's got. Sometimes it seems like, and we're struggling. And I love being a cop. I thank God every day that I got to do what I wanted to do, and I was just so blessed. And the young kids out there that want to be police officers, don't let this get in the way. I think it's going to get better eventually. It's like a pendulum. It swings back and forth. I've seen it swing both ways. Now I make the comment it's going over the top. So it's got to come back. There's no other way to go. And I hope and pray that that's what happens. But, it's just what we need. It's the right thing, and right usually wins in the end. So hopefully that's the way we're headed.
Yeah. That's true. And just to reiterate, there is a coalition between the state FOP, Sheriff's Association, Chiefs Association, and the FOP Labor Council. And they've been working very, very closely together as a coalition supporting law enforcement issues across the state, especially related to House Bill 3653 and the fallout. And for folks to know, the 750 pages, this came straight out of the Democrat Black Caucus. That's what they call themselves, and that's where it came from. Passed by one vote in the wee hours of the morning, when people only had maybe, 30 minutes, an hour to try to go through 750 pages. That's simply not the democracy that I want to be a part of. And I really believe that with these coalitions, we submitted 250 pages of concerns. We didn't ask for any trailer bills or anything. I think the chiefs got involved with that. The rest didn't, because we said, hey, you guys bought this, you own it. We're not here to bail you out. You bail yourself out, because this is something, you own it, and we don't want to get involved in that end of it. And so there was a trailer bill that came out to try to soften some of the blow, but it didn't do hardly anything. And to the point where folks, these officers have failed to turn on your camera. It was going to be a felony for the officer, and not being able to look at your camera to write a report. That's a problem. And then they, to the most egregious things, where you're in a shooting where you really need to look at your camera to get a quality report. No, you can't look at your camera. It's just incredible the kind of, and both these sheriffs have said, how far we could go into this, but it is the devil's in the details, and boy, it's front and center every day in a law enforcement officer's life. So I just want to take time to thank Sheriff Mahon and Sheriff Palmer for taking the time, and wish them well in their retirement, and joining the rest of the ranks out here with try to have a good time with the rest of life. So for the FOP and the Facts Matters podcast, I want to thank everybody for joining us today.